Welcome back to the Wonderful Walks in Golf podcast, where we walk you through the industry's untold stories, brand reviews, history lessons, and swing lessons from industry legends to those fresh on the scene. We'll carry you through the world of golf, so you grab your bag, strap up, and enjoy the walk. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Wonderful Walks in Golf podcast. We've got a repeat guest who was with us back when it was Enjoy the Walk, with us again after it was Wonderful Walks. So Colton Heisey, pumped to have you on the show, man. You have spent time on the, I believe, the Korn Ferry Tour, maybe the Latin America Tour, but I know now the LPGA Tour as a caddy. You have been doing what you do for years on end and just continually upping your game. So Colton, excited to have you on the show, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me back, guys. Good to see you guys. And you've been moving up as well, taking a new job. So congrats on that.
You got to keep dreaming, right? I mean, life keeps moving, so you got to keep moving with it. And yeah, I've had my fair share of moves, but we're home, I think, for a little while here in Salisbury, and excited for it.
All he wears is maroon and gold now.
Can you tell?
I can clearly.
Hey, just supporting the swag they give him.
I mean, I can't knock him too much because the hat he's wearing is pretty sick. And when he came up to visit a few months back, I was like, hats off.
Just wait till the branding's complete and this says golf underneath of it. Then we'll be spot on.
Yeah, you'll be dialed.
Well, Colton, excited to have you on the show and excited to dive into, I think, your most recent bag. But before we get into that, man, just kind of update us on where life has taken you since we've last spoken. I know you've had quite a few bags on the Korn Ferry level, and you've gotten to travel a good bit to some really awesome events. I mean, tune us in, man. Where's life taking you over the last couple months?
Yeah, so, I mean, basically like last year and a half, I was working for Brandon Matthews. We were on Korn Ferry. We won. We got our card. Had a little stint there on the PGA Tour. He was kind of hurt and battling some injuries and wasn't playing his best golf. And so obviously when that happens, I mean, guys are looking to go a different way. And so we split, and then I worked for Brandon Harkins all year on the Korn Ferry Tour this year. And then, I mean, we had couple decent finishes. He had played really good to start the year, and then we kind of fell into a slump. We actually kind of switched golf balls, which kind of left us in a little bit of a slump. We were looking for a little more spin with the driver, and then that kind of put us in a bad place just with some other stuff. So did that, and that was kind of frustrating for the both of us. And then towards the end of the year, we had a Korn Ferry event in Nashville, and the week before that, I had off. And so I texted one of my buddies who works on the LPGA and also Lexi Thompson, who I had worked for on the PGA Tour, and was like, hey, do you guys know anyone looking for just the week in Cincinnati? Like, it's only a 3-hour drive from Nashville. I'll just go work a one-off week. And they both texted me back saying that Lexi was looking, and I just kind of laughed. Like, I thought they were just messing with me at first. And I was like, no, seriously. Like, I just want to work just a week. And they're like, no, really. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. So that got all set up through the both of them. And so filled in for Lexi there. And obviously she hadn't had her best year, but I think she knew it was close. And so we had played decent that week and was fortunate enough to work a couple more weeks for her there to finish the season. And yeah, so that was kind of the end of the year there. And then I did PGA Tour Q School with Harkins, and we finished 14th, so missed out on getting our PGA Tour card by just a couple, but it was a good little run. So
what's been wild to me is to see the rise of like the bags you've been on, right? You talk about snagging Lexi's bag for a few rounds at the end of the year there, and in some like bigger events for her too, and obviously having Harkins through Q School and whatnot. It's been really awesome to see. I think from like the early days when you were kind of bouncing around and it was like one or two events here or one or two events there, and then finding a little bit of more steadiness with Matthews earlier in the year. And then, from what we've seen in the past, it's been really cool. It seems like each stint gets a little longer for you, which has been cool to see. And I think, describe that to us. How has the work been for each person you've gone to in over the last 8 to 10 months? And how has that really developed you into probably what's become an elite caddy that high-end pros are looking to have on their bag?
Yeah, so I mean, I think just like even from like back at the start, like working for Max Homa initially and just like getting the advice from him like who was clearly a high level player. Like even if his game was not showing it at the time, like he thought and practiced and did everything like a top 30 player in the world. So just like getting that advice, then kind of maturing as a person too, just getting out on tour and just figuring out the lifestyle out there and like what it actually takes to be a high level tour caddy. So I think like just going through all that, and then obviously COVID happened, so that kind of threw a wrench into things, which was just a weird 2 years in golf, and golf's just been in a weird spot even this past year. So just taking that all with it and just being able to roll with it, and I feel like for me, like you just keep building and you keep trying to add something to your repertoire, whatever it might be. Even if it's just something small, you just slowly like keep adding those pieces. You gain the experience. You get to see like the golf courses more, so you go back to places where you're very comfortable and kind of know the ins and outs and know where they can't hit it and things like that. And so that's been all just, I mean, you just continue to network and you continue to build and add everything together. And just, I mean, it's such a weird business that we're in on the caddy side of things. So like, you really never know how it's going to shake out. You have to just keep doing what you can do, and hope that the calls and whatever fall your way. Especially when you're dealing with like agents and coaches and other sort of things. Like sometimes it's just out of your control, and you just have to know that you're putting your best foot forward, and hopefully that's going to be enough to land you on the bag that takes you to the top.
For sure. I think, Dante, I remember when we had Kenny Harms on the show, Kevin Na's caddy, he was kind of talking about it. And especially like when he was getting his start, he's like, there's just so much uncertainty. Like what business is like a tour caddy's business? It's really, you can probably count it on one hand, the amount of similarities that you can find between tour caddies and other professions. It's just a very unique business, and a unique business, especially to find a long-term gig that really pays off in the end, right? It's probably 1% of the 1%. But before we dive into where you're going to be at for, I think, the foreseeable future, I want to talk quick on something you just mentioned, which was the ball change and the spin that you were looking for, or your player was looking for, in the driver, and how it really kind of upended his progression that year. I mean, Dante, you and I were talking about it before we hopped on, like how the littlest of changes like that can really change a tour player's career, or at least the outlook, especially for someone who's grinding to go get it on a qualifying tour. From a caddy's perspective, how do you navigate that when you know they're making a little change like that and it's affecting them on such a big level?
Yeah, so I mean, I think for us, like like when we switched, the driver just spinning a little, like not enough. So it's really hard if a shot starts offline. You can't really curve a shot when it spins too little. So if it starts offline, it stays offline. And I mean, spin's what keeps your ball here. It keeps the dispersion where you need it to when you do miss it. So that's kind of what we were looking for, just something to help us keep it within where we were looking. And so we went into, it was one of the Titleist balls that we just added. It just was a little bit spinnier with the driver, but it just took our iron play from one of his strengths to a major weakness for 8 to 10 weeks, which was just hard because it was like a very low launch, high spin ball. So like the ball was just not staying in the air. So just making those adjustments for not only me, but for him, like when you are so used to hitting a shot and knowing that if you want to step on one or if you want to like lay off one, like he loves chipping shots. So what was really hard was this was low launch, high spin. So these these chippy shots that he would hit would come out even lower than the window he was looking and not stay in the air long enough to get to the number. So he'd feel like he chipped it a really good number and it would come up 5-6 short of where we were looking. And it just made us look really dumb for 3 months. So that was kind of hard. Like even on like my side of the bag, it's like you start to just question everything. And then so finally in Colorado, I just looked at him. I was like, hey, like we can't keep doing this to ourselves. Like we got to go back to a ball that you've had success with, that you know what it's doing, like have some confidence with. Because this is just, I mean, we're fighting a losing battle here, and obviously we haven't been able to make the adjustments necessary with that golf ball.
That's got to be pretty tough. I mean, a golf ball change can really demoralize the player's game if they're not seeing the results immediately. And then, you've progressed your skill as a caddy. I mean, Can you elaborate more on how, like, with such this, you think it's the smallest of things, but it can turn into great things. Like, how do you go about quickly adapting to almost be like a mental coach while out on the course and adapting to the players themselves quickly when you're switching different players from like a week to week basis?
Yeah, I mean, so fortunately, I haven't had to do that much lately in terms of switching players like week to week. But there are guys that do it, and there's players that switch their caddy very often. But yeah, like when you're dealing with something like that, I mean, it's definitely hard because, and this is kind of what I've seen is like more of the presenting issue is immediately the player starts to think that it's their golf swing or something they're doing when really like you just made a ball change and haven't been able to adjust to what the golf ball is doing and like the way you're seeing shots fall and what you're normally used to like visually and like distance wise. So they immediately start to try and make changes in their golf swing because they feel like it, and whatever it may be, like they did ball testing, and obviously ball testing is great, but if you haven't played a lot of like rounds of golf with that golf ball and you're expecting things to be like they were in the past, then immediately you start to search in your golf swing, and then you can kind of get rabbit holed with your golf swing and start to actually like get worse because you're trying to make changes and figure it out and figure out why the golf ball's not doing what you want. And it just might be as simple as like, hey, we just need to go back to what we were doing with the golf ball. Like,
damn.
And I think it speaks to just how dialed these guys are. You mentioned 5 to 6 yards being the difference, right? Of like coming up short. And you laughed. I caught it. You laughed and you're like, it made us look dumb for like months on end. And it's like most golfers don't realize that the key to really playing that level of golf is being that dialed. The difference is 5 to 6 yards from being a top end tour player of getting your card or being a guy on the outside looking in.
oh, for sure. And I mean, like the round that we finally switched back, like I watched him stripe it. He literally didn't miss a line on Friday in Colorado. And obviously we're playing at elevation, so like that, like the spin and the yardages with the golf ball just get absolutely like maximized there. So like it makes you look even dumber when you're at elevation. If you're not spinning the golf ball like what your eyes and everything's telling you to do. So yeah, you really get exposed at elevation if you're not hitting it good. And so like I watched on Friday and I'm like, he's just striping it. Like it sounds good. It looks good. Every shot's like on the line we're looking. It's coming out of the window we're looking. And yet the ball's not ending up where we want it to. Like something's wrong here. Like this is just like a problem that is not in the golf swing right now. And obviously that's where they tend to search. So it was just like, all right, we've got to just totally scrap this. Know that you're just like somehow convince yourself that you're swinging it well because you are, and then get back to just like the other golf ball and just playing golf again. So it was funny. The week after that, I think we were in Springfield, Missouri. It may not have been the direct week after, but one of the next couple weeks. And we were 7 off the cut line on Friday with 9 holes to play, and we shot 29 and hooped it for eagle from like 121 on the last to make the cut on the number.
Oh my God.
Yeah. It was like, oh, nice to have our golf ball back.
29. Yeah, like can we bring that back tomorrow, please?
Yeah.
It's just, and that's the craziness of like the stories that don't get told on the PGA Tour and even on the qualifying tours of just like how little changes like that are being made, probably way more than we ever realize, right? Like guys are constantly tinkering with stuff. It's an extra layer of tape under the grip, maybe to get a better feel under the right hand or something, right? It's all these nuances that like you don't realize are really making a massive difference in 2 or 3 strokes a weekend, which over 8 to 10 weeks is the difference between getting your card or not.
Oh, for sure. Absolutely. And there's just, I mean, and there's guys that tinker a lot more than others. Like, I mean, if you've ever been on the range on the PGA Tour, like Hideki is the master tinkerer. Like he has the entire Strixon team out there with 30 shafts and 25 heads. And like, it's wild that he can confidently play golf every week with as much as he tinkers. Like me personally, if I was switching equipment and like tinkering that much, I would have no confidence in what is in my bag.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like there's just such a fine line of like you like to try and perfect it, But at the same time, and Dante, you know as well as
Dude,
I do,
tinkering, you can go down a rabbit hole.
yes. And especially with you starting to build clubs by yourself, you found that out pretty quickly.
Gone down plenty of rabbit holes. I'm like, I'm just gonna switch this shaft. Maybe it'll completely change. It's like, no, let's maybe like dial back and take a look at your swing instead. I think it goes back to the golf ball that you were just saying. Like, I'm gonna start switching my
Yeah.
swing because I'm trying to make the ball do, hook a little bit more. In reality, it's like, no. And then you try and just like do one little extra move, and now your swing's all out of whack. Dude, it's a fine line when it comes to tinkering a little on the too much of side.
Well, and that's the thing with like the guys on tour as well is like they're all so good with the golf club that if the golf ball isn't doing what they want it to do, they're gonna find a way to make it do what they want it to do. So like they're gonna, I mean, they're athletes. Obviously, it's like anyone in like any sport that is pro athlete. Like they're good enough and athletic enough at what they do. They're gonna make it work somehow, whether they're hurt, whatever it is. They're gonna figure out how to make that work, and sometimes making it work gets their golf swing a little bit out of whack. But they're gonna make the golf ball do what they want for the time being.
Yeah, even if the long term goal isn't reached, they're gonna figure out a way to do it.
Right.
Which, it just gives so much props to the guys that have found success and done it for such a long time, that they've been able to, yes, also tinker while like finding success in the same time frame. It's a massive props, and it's like I'm sure you see it more than most of how much goes on to make that thing work inside the ropes day in and day out.
Oh, for sure. I mean, longevity on the PGA Tour is probably one of the most impressive things. Like guys with careers like Charles Howell and like those guys. I mean, to know that you're probably not a top 20 player in the world, but still be consistent enough to like never really like be in risk of losing your card. Yeah, those guys sometimes are more impressive in terms of like just the like wholesome of it, like the career outlook. Obviously, the guys who win majors, like they're the most talented guys on the planet. But yeah, some of the guys that have figured out how to just stay in their little window and never really be in jeopardy of losing their card has been pretty impressive for sure.
Yeah, well, I think that kind of brings us talking on the LPGA Tour side as well, folks. Just like that, we kind of briefed on a little earlier of you grabbing Lexi's bag for a few times over the fall into the winter. I think she played a doubles event with Ricky. Am I right in saying that? Over right before the holidays.
Yeah, the Grant Thornton Invitational was really cool. It was first event, first time they did that like format with the guys and the women. 16 teams, twosomes, and the format was pretty cool. Yeah, scrambled the first day, then it was true alternate shot the second day. So we, I think,
you carried her bag that week.
Yeah, and we were paired with Ricky. We ended up finishing T6. So
now, would you like to see more of that on within the tours, kind of combining their tours and having like tournaments and where they could maybe accumulate points on both ends?
Yeah, I don't know how. Yeah, it would hard to make a team event like that where points are included. But to be able to do something where maybe the men and the women are playing individually but playing together, like paired together but playing individual tournaments for points. I think the European Tour does one like that. I'm not sure which event it is. I want to say like Scandinavia or something. But yeah, no, it was an unreal vibe. The crowds were great out there, and I think just being able to bring like both tours together obviously draws. I mean, it just draws more popularity to the sport and kind of brings in that little bit of diversity in between the fan bases.
And I think just personally too, it was fun to watch the camaraderie between the pros on both sides. Like how much fun they enjoyed playing with each other because they don't get to do it that much, and to see the respect and the mutual like honoration of both swings. Like the guys were like enamored at the girls' swings, and vice versa. The girls were like, "Oh my god, I get to play with Tony Finau or whatever." It's like both sides were just so happy to be there and like to have fun in an event like that. It was really cool to see, like for the bigger growth of the game, of just seeing both PGA and LPGA pros like having fun and like basically being impressed with each other's games and how they handle themselves.
I think that's been probably the most active on text messaging in regards to watching PG or professional golf Dalton and I have had. And, like you said, the pro golf has been in a weird state this past year, but, our communication in regards to just experiencing it as a fan, watching it, has been pretty active when we were going back and bantering back and forth when it came to just watching just the men and women, come together and play one tournament.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we played with Tony and Nelly the first day, and Tony hit driver off of every hole, which obviously in the scramble, send it. But he did not miss a golf shot. It was unbelievable. It's like one of those where it's like, so we played 9 holes with Tony in a practice round at the U.S. Open at Torrey. And it's just like one of those where you'll watch him, and sometimes when he's on like that, you're just like, how does this guy ever lose a golf tournament? And he made everything too. Every putt he looked at, I think he might have missed like 3 or 4 putts, and Nelly was putting second, and she made everything. We watched him shoot I think they shot 16 under first day. And we were like, sure.
Wow, that kind of stuff is just it's so cool to understand and know that those guys do have that extra level, and those girls have that extra level where it's just
oh, absolutely,
it's mindless. And they're unconscious, but conscious in the same regard. And mostly every tour pro that's seen success has that level, which is just so fun to if you're in front of it and watching it happen. I can imagine it's just otherworldly.
Yeah, I mean, and it was just really cool too because the format set up so obviously in the alternate shot we have to hit tee shots for Ricky. So there were a couple holes where normally we would probably press it up, but there's hazard pretty much everywhere out there. So you're okay. For the women, we kind of had if we were playing, because they play the CME there. So normally she would hit 3-wood and we would have 8 or 9 iron in, but we were okay hitting 2 iron because Ricky was still going to be able to hit 7 iron in, just because obviously they hit it a little further. And
you had a different strategy, but it was a good strategy to kind of go into.
Yeah, I mean, it was just one of those where we were just in alternate shot, just trying to get it in play and get as many looks as possible. And so and the same thing on Sunday, it was modified better ball. So we teed off from the women's tees and Ricky would tee off from the men's tees. And then after the tee shots, we would switch and play our balls out. So it was weird because the women actually had further in off the guys' tee shots because it was blowing pretty good on Sunday. So it was really hard for the women to make birdies in the modified better ball just because of how far we were left in most of the time.
Huh. That's pretty interesting.
Yeah, so it was an interesting format, and that was the first time they had done it like that. And so we weren't really sure what to expect going in, but looking back on it, that was kind of one of the takeaways. Yeah, it was cool to see that and kind of see how it all worked out. I think that format would have probably suited a little better T-balls evenly if it wasn't blowing 25. Yeah. But yeah, with it being like that, it obviously played kind of tough because I mean the guys are on the back tee boxes and it's blowing 30 in your face and they're hitting drives that only go 255. Now it leaves the women 4 iron in, and it's all right, cool. Yeah,
they're just crap.
Yeah.
Well, talk about how that experience kind of led into what you're excited to get into in 2024. I think we're happy to announce it here on our podcast, but your partnership with Lexi is obviously going to extend into the 2024 season. Talk us through that. Talk us how kind of it developed throughout the fall and into the winter and what you're looking forward to do in 2024.
Yeah. So obviously it started with her in Cincinnati and then ended up working Arkansas for her. She asked me if I could work that week, and we played well again. We're tied for the lead at some point on Sunday, and ended up finishing 5th or 6th, not sure exactly. And then she played Texas, which I had to go back and work the Korn Ferry Tour Championship for Harkins, so wasn't able to do that. One of my buddies filled in. They played well again. And then obviously she got the PGA Tour start in Vegas, which I was asked to work, but I wasn't able to because I had my brother's wedding back in Pennsylvania. So obviously that kind of took precedent there. Unfortunately, would have been a really cool experience to work that PGA Tour event with her and just kind of see her do her thing on PGA Tour, especially because like I've been to that golf course and know a bunch of the guys out there. So just to see her game that I see weekly on the LPGA stack up on the PGA Tour would have been really cool. Um, and then so ended up working the Annika Invitational for her over in Tampa, and we played good there. Kind of struggled a little bit on the weekend. We were in the hunt going into the weekend, and just treaded water on Saturday and Sunday. But still a solid finish and a lot for her to build on going into the end of the year. And then obviously did the Grant Thornton Invitational with her. That was just really cool experience with being paired with Ricky. And I mean, we don't live too far from each other down in South Florida. So just kind of talked about home and hung out. And I'm good friends with his caddy as well, Ricky Romano. So it was just like a cool pairing to end the year on, just a light note and get that experience. And then, so obviously I did Q school with Harkins. And if we got our PGA Tour card, obviously I was going to be heading back to the PGA Tour. But I was fortunate. Obviously, that didn't finish how we wanted it to. But Lexi did offer me the job full time here for 2024. So it was a great opportunity that obviously I can't pass up. And so I'm really excited to work with her. And she's just such a cool person. And obviously, I think the media spins a lot of things in her career a bit the wrong way. And she's probably one of the more misunderstood players on tour. And I mean, I think she's happy with how her career's panned out, and I don't want to speak for her, so I won't touch too much on that. But I mean, she still has all the competitive fire as she has in the past, and she's still just as talented as she ever was. So I'm looking forward to 2024 and seeing if she can get back to kind of where she belongs, back in the winner's circle. And just looking forward to that opportunity because, I mean, just working a couple weeks for her, I mean, she's as talented as they come. So really looking forward to seeing if we can get the most out of that.
I think first off, that's just incredibly exciting to be on a bag of that level, and just to have like a great relationship with Lexi like that. I think people forget how young she was when she came onto the tour, and really like came into the spotlight. I think she was like 14 or 15, just insanely young. Like she's 28 years old. She's got so much time ahead of her to really like have a killer career from now until whenever she retires. I think it's so crazy that she's had the experiences she's had so far because she's experienced so much at such a young age, which, if you look back on how many opportunities she's had to win major championships, it's really incredible. So, we're pumped for you to be on the bag. And I know you had mentioned the U.S. Women's Open this year, being back in the home state of Pennsylvania at Lancaster Country Club. What do you feel like the vibe is going in with obviously on the bag for Lexi this year and hoping to get back in major championship contention? What the vibe will feel like coming back to PA and caddying in front of your hometown crowd?
Yeah, it's going to be really cool. Obviously, that one's circled on my calendar for sure. Obviously, you want to win all the majors and contend wherever you can. But if I had to pick one, that certainly would be the one that I would choose this year. But yeah, obviously, it'll be really cool being back pretty close to my hometown and having a bunch of friends and family come out and be able to support that week. And obviously, it'll just be really cool for her to kind of get back in major contention after this past year not being the year that she was hoping for, but obviously has had so much success throughout her career and also ended the year on a pretty good note to take some momentum into 2024. So obviously that would be a really cool event, and just looking forward to caddying some majors on the LPGA. I've done a few on the PGA Tour. But yeah, it'll be really cool to see. Also, like with the LPGA, that's the weirdest thing probably in between the PGA Tour and the LPGA Tour is the depth in terms of like major championships. Like there's just not as many players that can contend and win a major championship without like fully blacking out. solely just because of like the distance and the rough and the firmness of the greens based on how much they spin the golf ball at the distance that they hit.
That's interesting. And you took the words right out of my mouth of like, what's the biggest difference do you think at an LPGA versus a PGA major championship? And
Yeah.
and I think the distance and length and spin being probably maybe what a lot of people wouldn't have thought. I think, when you look at like just the LPGA versus the PGA Tour, a lot of folks think, well, every girl who tees it up or every woman who tees it up at a major championship obviously has a shot. And I think probably that statement may be more true at, say, a US Open or say the Masters versus like a US Open on the women's side, where maybe you get some amateurs in there that qualified or even professionals that qualified that maybe just probably don't ever have a shot versus the top 10 in the world at the LPGA level.
Yeah, for sure. And I think a lot of it too is just like more so has to do with like the distance. Like your bombers who may not play great in the regular season, like they still have a chance at the majors. Like they have such an advantage. And that's like one of the things like with Lexi, like she's top 15 in distance out there. So like even for us, like a lot of the bunkers are like fringe carries for a lot of the girls that are comfortable carries for us. And then like fairways where the bunker is pretty small. So like if there's not a lot of rough, it's not a big deal. But like for the women not spinning it as much, them hitting in the rough is like a much bigger penalty than like the guys hitting in the rough. So sometimes we'll be able to carry a bunker and the other girls are having to lay it short of that bunker and we're out driving people by like 100. And like that's just such an advantage when you like look at it statistically and start to analyze like the data, and you get that for a major championship where the rough's longer and the greens are firmer, and that advantage just becomes so much more distinct.
Yeah, and it's something you don't think about. Like at that level, you think, okay, at least they're within like 30, 40 yards. But like when you truly find the other end of a bunker like that and probably hit a little bit of a downslope, you are distancing yourself heavily from someone who might catch that bunker or even lay up short of the bunker because the bunker's an issue.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. And like the drivers or like the bunkers that we can cover with driver, some of the other girls have to lay it back. So like they're hitting hybrid. So like it's not like they're just hitting driver and they're 100 behind us because they're probably only like 20 behind us in most cases. But when they have to lay it short of that bunker and comfortably lay it short of that bunker, that brings in so much more. And it's such an advantage. And that's definitely one of the biggest things that I noticed in like my few weeks out there.
And that's really cool to see. And I think, to be on someone's bag who has that advantage is fun as a caddy, right? You get to take probably a little more risks than the rest of the caddies out there on the LPGA Tour week to week. And you get to have maybe a little bit more fun in calling the shots.
Oh, for sure. And I mean, when she's on, like her iron play is like, it's actually a joke. Like she literally hits inside 10 feet every hole. And I'm like, all right, this is like, I forget, it might've been the first round in Arkansas. I think we shot 65 and she hit 18 greens. And it was just like, I felt like I didn't do anything. I'm like, I was just here. I'm just bags on my shoulder, tell you how far it is, watch you hit it to 8 feet, read a couple putts. Like that was that.
Thanks for having me along.
Yeah, literally. And it was just like, cool. I'll just stay here and shut up all day. Just keep you company.
Love that.
What's it? Shut up, keep up.
Yeah.
That's
yeah. Shut up, keep up.
Yeah. I mean, what do you see? Maybe being obviously we just talked about the differences, but maybe like obviously they're all world-class players and they're all professionals in their own right. What are maybe some of the similarities you see from carrying on the PGA Tour bags that, week to week you find yourself finding similar ways you go about business as a caddy on the LPGA Tour?
Yeah, I mean, I think in terms of like caddying and your prep work and everything you're doing there, it's pretty similar. The artist books are just a touch different out there. I think there's just made by a different person. Like out there, they spray paint all the heads. Like they just spray paint in the middle of the fairways, and that's where everything's like done off of. Where obviously on the PGA Tour, they're done off the sprinkler heads. But yeah, so that was an adjustment originally. But we can also use lasers on the LPGA. That's the best thing.
Oh,
it's the best thing about working on the LPGA. It's like if you happen to have a short week or travel, you whatever, like you don't get in until like a later day, and you don't get as much prep in as you'd like to. Like you always have that to fall back on. you don't want to like lean on it as a crutch, obviously, as a caddy, like, because then, I mean, I feel like there's definitely people that could become lazy with that, like having that. And so you don't want to do that because obviously you want your player to have like confident info. And like, there's definitely like a time or two in my first week where I'm like, normally I would either pace off a number or something, and like I shot it with a laser, and like it was funny. So we were in Tampa. There was one that was actually wrong. So we were looking to like we hit it in the left rough off the par five, and we were looking to lay up, and I was like looking at my book, and I like would have done the math and get a number, and we were just like, oh, we'll laser it. Well, so I shoot like the hill in front of the bunker we're trying to lay it up. Well, turns out it was like a little bit of a downslope, and there was like 30 more yards of fairway that I didn't laser, so we could have hit like 2 more clubs. And so we end up having like 155 into the wind into this par 5. And she ends up hitting it to like 8 feet and made birdie. So like we kind of got to laugh about it afterwards, but like it wasn't very funny in the moment for me.
Yeah, I bet. You're like, oh, I'm sorry, boss. I left 30 extra yards for you to just dial one in there on the table.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, especially like on a par 5. Like you're not trying to have to hit 7-9 into a par 5 when you're one of the longest players on tour.
Yeah, no. But hey, all is good when you're dealing with that good of a player. You make birdie anyway.
Yeah. But yeah, that's definitely some of the like adjustments I've had to make on my end. And I'll say like, I think some of the LPGA Tour players look for a little more out of their caddy, in terms of like just talking about the shot and telling them kind of, they just want more information. So I feel like the guys are a little bit, I wouldn't even say easier, because it's not really like, sometimes when you get to give more information, it's easier on you as a caddy. Because sometimes when you're only asked for a little bit of information, you want to give more, but that's not what they want. So you kind of have to limit your information. Like, I know Bones has a saying, like, if you can't convince your player in 20 words or less, then you probably shouldn't say it.
Interesting.
I like that though.
Yeah.
Keep it short, keep it sweet.
Yeah.
You're only out there for a certain amount of time, and they've got to hit a shot no matter what. So,
well, they've got to hit a shot, and the more you talk about it, unless you guys are on the same page and just talking through it. There's a difference between talking about it and talking through it. And if you're just talking about it, that just brings a lot of like indecision.
Sure.
And the more you talk about it, the more thoughts go through their head, and it's like, okay, now I have 5 different shots in my head. Now
we're gonna like pause for a second. I'm gonna write this down because I don't know if I don't know if you spoke to Dalton or heard anything. So Dalton,
I was gonna say, so I don't know if the listeners have heard or maybe have tuned into my own
tips.
Instagram, but we're working on the 142-day plan to qualify for U.S. Open. Part of that plan is having Dante on the bag for me at his home club where the U.S. Open local is going to be. So any and all caddying tips, Dante will pen and pad take from you. Any quotes, any good gotcha moments. I think he'll take anything and everything to get ready for that day as well.
Just so you kind of get some information, this is the home course I've been at for the last 10 years. Played it over like 100 rounds every year, so you know I've got my numbers in on playing it. My caddy experience. This is my debut. So if that puts any context as to how this is gonna go.
Yeah, I mean, I would say just like maybe a couple of high noons in the like bottom pocket of the bag, and yeah, you'll be dialed in. It'll take the nerves out.
I mean, he did come up in November, and I kind of watched him play while we played, and kind of saw a little bit. I mean, you know, we've played together a few times, so I kind of seen his game, and I mean, the course is kind of straightforward as a visual aspect, because he did come I think during COVID and played, and you know we played all the way back, and that was like my first time playing all the way back there, so I was more focused on myself, and he was able to shoot one under like with ease. So I was like, all right, cool. Yeah. Obviously, he can hit the shots leading into the greens. It really kind of came down to it. I think where my information is going to be around the greens, because the greens are massive and they're just giant mounds. So they've had a qualifier there a few years ago, and they've tricked it out. So I'm interested to see what they're going to lay out come into this year. So it's just kind of more, I think that's where my strength is going to come into. But yeah, I'll definitely have some drinks at the bottom of the bag in the pocket just to loosen up.
For sure.
Keep it playful, keep it, short and sweet.
So Brandon Harkins always told a funny story because I think it was 2 years ago in Boise. Him and Joel Damon are really good friends, and Joel caddied for him. And Joe got there that week and was like, he was giving him his rules, and he goes, "All right, there's no waters in the bag all week. We're not putting any in there. You can only drink them on the tee boxes. This thing's gonna be as light as possible." So I would joke with Harkins all year, like whenever we got on the tee, and I would go to put a water in there, I'd be like, "You sure you want this in here? Like, it's kind of heavy for me."
That's funny.
Love that. We might let him off the hook and push card it for him just to save his back. But who knows?
All right.
Are you gonna be all right? You gonna be a man?
Well, listen.
Get him an umbrella for the sun too.
Yes.
I'm gonna strategize the bag. If you bring that giant Sun Mountain sun bag where you have like 50 golf balls in there and God knows what, that's all coming out. I will organize this golf bag.
I've got swing trainers in there. I've got mirrors in there. Yeah, you're screwed.
He showed up and I took that. When he pulled up to my driveway at my house, and opens the trunk and I'm like, "All right, dude, I'll grab your bag." It was like 100 pounds. And I'm like, "Dude, what do you have in here?" So I don't know. I was like, yeah, that's gonna change come in May.
Tripod, a camera.
Yeah, he's the guy that shows up to the country club and the caddy immediately changes his bag out.
That's
you get a Sunday carry and 7 clubs. Choose wisely.
Yeah, I was like, what is this? I said, nope, this isn't happening in a few months. Nope.
Dante, I hope you get lucky enough that it's not raining and you're just fully loaded down with needing octopus arms and the bag being heavier than it needs to be.
See me just struggling, 100 yards back.
We'll treat
him.
Yeah,
I'm gonna be getting a call in from the bullpen.
we'll be turning coming around the halfway house like, dude, I'm out.
Colton, I know you've got a great gig, man, but I'm gonna need you for the back 9.
No, I'm actually pumped because, like we've discussed prior, is that I'm excited to actually kind of take my knowledge, my local course knowledge, and then just watch him play a golf course. I've never done that ever, and then kind of
right,
especially at my golf course, I think it's going to be very interesting, and that's what I'm excited for, to kind of see what I can. Obviously he knows what his game and he knows what he needs to do, but, adding a little bit of my information to it and then taking, the bag off his shoulders. I'm actually excited to see where I can, put my input and watch him, do his thing.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. I've done it for a couple of my buddies at home and just like mid-am qualifiers, and like I'll go help them out, and they obviously enjoy the conversation and the information. And I enjoy just getting to hang out.
I think what I'm looking for is the conversation in between the shots, way more than the actual shots.
Dude, keep it lighthearted. I'll bust your balls probably. Like, I don't know. One of a Lupe Fiasco lines was playful but serious.
That's a Lupe Fiasco line.
Yeah, I like really shortened it. It's just like
really throwing it back.
Couple lines. Maybe I'm dating myself here, but
you heard it here first. Lupe Fiasco.
Lupe Fiasco is going to be the theme song of the U.S. Open qualifying.
I like it.
I love everything about it.
No, it's
well,
gonna
Colton,
be a good time.
it's been a blast having you back on, man. We won't keep you any longer. We'll let you get back to your holiday before you head out of Canada. But really appreciate the time and excited to see you inside the ropes with Lexi Thompson this year on the LPGA Tour. Pumped for you guys. Wish you nothing but great success and a lot of fun as you guys travel and compete and go get some dubs.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on, boys. Good to talk with you guys, and best of luck on qualifying for the U.S. Open. I'll be following along for sure.
Hell yeah.
Appreciate it, man. Take care, and we'll definitely chat soon.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, boys.
Awesome.